This is a video that I have been stressing about making for years. At least 4 years, but probably more than that, probably closer to something like 6. I made it a Twitch goal, like a donation goal on Twitch for me to make a Umineko video of some sort. I've talked about doing it for years because this is a story that means so much to me. I've cried talking about it on stream, just talking about it. I've gushed nonsensically. I have cried off camera and on camera just thinking about this. I've been playing the soundtrack at the gym, and I've just started crying on a elliptical just because a new Umineko song comes up like this one. This is a series that means so much to me. This is a story that means the world to me. But I don't know how to talk about it. It's such a weird one. It's kind of like Naruto. I made a video called I Don't Know How to Talk About Naruto on my main channel, basically talking about how words don't really express what I want to express about the story. It feels kind of reductive to try to put it into words, and that's how I feel with Umineko. But at the same time, I think it's kind of poetic that it's led to this, where I have no notes, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. I don't know if this is going to be 5 minutes or 50, probably something in between. It's just, this is the promised video about Umineko, that I didn't know if it was going to be a whole video essay. I didn't know if it was going to be something like this. I didn't know if I'd have to give up on doing it because the words just didn't come. So, again, I have no plans about what I'm going to say, but some words will come. Umineko no Naku Koro ni is one of my favorite stories of all time, and that's an understatement. Every year I do a top 100, and this year, recently, a couple weeks ago, I put it as number 4, only behind Final Fantasy XIV, Haikyuu, and Hunter x Hunter. It is a life-changing story. It's something that has changed my views on what I look for in art, and it's something that I think will never leave me. I think it's given me such unforgettable, unbelievable moments that have really stuck in my mind that I could talk about forever. It's given me some of my favorite songs and sequences, but it's so hard to talk about for me. It's such a difficult one. I'll start with this. To be clear, I don't plan on there being any spoilers for this. I'm obviously going to be talking about it in some detail, but it's going to be vague, so you can probably listen to this if you haven't read it, and you are interested in what it means to me. I'll just be talking about general vibes and general things. I read Umineko across something like 6 to 8 months. For anyone who isn't aware, Umineko takes, at the very least, it's gotta be at the very bottom end, 150 hours or so. Maybe a little less if you're really being efficient, but for me it was 200 plus if you consider the amount of time I stayed on lines. Umineko is a visual novel for anyone unaware, but it's a visual novel that challenges the reader to theorize and reflect on the plot, the themes, the mysteries, the character writing in their own time and while reading. So I spent so much time taking notes, but mostly just reflecting internally about what I was in for, what I was going through. I basically started it because it was so widespread acclaimed, not widespread, sorry, but critically acclaimed from people who I trusted. In the circles of people I talked to who have experienced, there wasn't a single person I talked to that didn't have it below a 10 out of 10, I feel like, that didn't love it. Everyone loved this visual novel and the story and compared it to other stories that I loved. And so I said, you know what, I'll give it a go. So I downloaded it, I did all the things you have to do to get it working. It was on this old-ass laptop that that was my dad's old work laptop that kind of was gathering dust. At that time, my laptop, for some reason, it didn't work programming on my old MacBook, or what's old now but was new then. And so I couldn't play it on my MacBook, I couldn't play it on my Apple OS. So I downloaded it on my dad's really old laptop. It was creaky, it couldn't really do much, but it could run Umineko. So I downloaded it there, and I checked it out, and I think the beginning of Umineko is one of the stronger starts to a story I've ever experienced. There are 8 episodes to it, and the first episode introduces a lot of the character dynamics and familial conflicts and familial relationships and themes very well, while giving you a very classically horror, mysterious, murder mystery-esque vibe. It's very creepy. It's got a great atmosphere. The music's fantastic. There's rain. There's great rain sound effects pounding on the window panes in this manner. It's just all around a really, I think, a really great start to the story. And I really was sucked in. I was sucked into the premise, the dynamics between the family members, the relationships, the emotions. It's a great, I won't spoil a ton, but there's murder mystery elements to it. And it really hooks you in. Incredibly well. Incredibly well. And by the end of it, I was kind of gobsmacked at how this was apparently 1/8 of the story. Spoiler alert, it's less than that. And I felt like I had been through such a journey, and at the same time, it barely scratched the surface. And by the end of episode 1, I was pretty damn hooked. It wasn't something that I thought was masterful already, but it was something that really sunk its teeth into me with. Something with Umineko is that I often talk about my Mount Rushmore, which is now probably more than 4 series, of character writing, which is Hunter x Hunter, Haikyuu, Final Fantasy XIV, and I think I would add a couple other series to it, but Umineko was the 4th. Umineko has, quite simply, one of the best casts of characters I've ever seen, and it's in conversation for the best cast of characters. And episode 1, I think, does a really good job in introducing and laying the foundations for all of that. Episode 2 is a little kind of slandered. Maybe not slandered, maybe it is, I don't really know, I'm kind of out of the loop, but I know it's not looked at fondly, but I think it's a great expansion of a lot of the foundations laid with episode 1. It develops the character relationships really well. I don't think it's significantly better in quality than episode 1, but I ended episode 2 not at all, burnt out, or being like, I'm a little bit bored with this. No, it had built upon itself really, really incredibly well. And I just couldn't wait to see more of these characters and more of what Ryukishi had for me, I guess. Episode 3, I think, is the first big step up. It's the first big step up to me. Not a huge one, but it's like episodes 1 and 2 are strong 8s out of 10. Episode 3 to me is a 9 out of 10. And the different mechanics to the world it adds, the different mechanics to the rules it adds, the new characters, new sort of perspectives, new elements to characters like Ava. Episode 3 is where I went and really sort of took notice that this could become something very meaningful to me. And then it was episode 4, which I do consider to be probably the episode with potentially the most flaws, but also at the same time with some of the highest highs. Episode 4 is where I was hooked. Episode 4 is the end of the first half of the story, the end of the question arcs, where I guess a lot of the questions and mysteries of the narrative are set out to you, whereas episodes 5 to 8 are the answers arcs, where apparently you're meant to get the answers, where you do get the answers, but it's complicated. Anyways, episode 4. Episode 4, the end of it was so... throughout it introduces a new character that I really, really adored, and it introduced me to points of view that are very, very sad, very, very upsetting, very emotional. But at the same time, I think episode 4 hit me at a point in my life where I was not because of anything to do with my loved ones or family, but I was alone. I felt alone. I felt I don't know. I felt on the internet, because I was making YouTube videos at this point for a few years, on the internet, with my friend groups, with my school, because I was at school during this point in time. No, actually, I had just gotten out of school. Regardless, for one reason or another, I was a little bit depressed. I was just feeling very lonely. I obviously had close relationships, with my family and my friends, and I didn't have a partner at the time, but, I wasn't lacking in any of that, but for some reason I just felt off and alone and lonely. I think that happens regardless of what goes on in one's life. We all feel lonely sometimes, and for a good few weeks I wasn't feeling great. And it happened while I was playing episode 4 of Umineko, reading it. And it just so happened to intersect with a really incredibly important section of the story that also had characters who were lonely. There's a character, Maria, whose relationship with her mother is incredibly layered and emotional and sad and brutal. But we see a perspective of it that really nails home a loneliness, but also how there can be a comfort in a type of loneliness through memories, through solace, and pouring oneself into the things we hold dear, and holding that close, and not feeling alone because of that. That walking the streets of Maria's hometown with her and Saktaro, as well as that, being in Angie's shoes, where she is very alone, and yet she finds comfort in other things, and it doesn't last. There's peaks and valleys, and there's positives and negatives, and sometimes Angie feels lonely, and sometimes she doesn't. But during this specific point, she was able to find solace in very similar things that Maria does. Again, not getting into big specifics, but if you know, you know. I felt like that was something that really comforted me those days. And I look back specifically on those moments of episode 4 as if they were longer than they actually were, because they don't actually take up a huge amount of time. You spend some time there, but nonetheless, those sort of the first half of episode 4 and those bits really, really, I think, stuck with me a lot and really comforted me a lot. And so I feel a lot of gratitude to it for that. It came at a perfect time in my life. But then you just continue through episode 4, and it ends with a moment in a sequence that is so incredibly moving and gutting and sad and tragic, but also there's an element of empowerment, and there's a huge hook to get you to read the rest of it. And at that point, I was like, I think this is currently becoming one of my favorite stories ever. And for reference, episode 4 is only my 4th favorite out of 8. 3 of the 4 episodes to come were up to its standard. Actually, all 4 were. Episode 5 came and introduced a character that a lot of people dislike, but to me, I adore her. I really, really adore her. I think she's tons of fun, while also being quite despicable, but she's exactly the thematic antithesis needed by the story. It broadens things, it offers new perspectives, it gives answers, but it makes you question things. What is real? Umineko is very abstract. It's very challenging. Every episode will have you questioning what is real and how you can interpret certain elements of the text, and for a lot of people, me included, that was beautiful. That was a beautiful part of it. And um, what I really love about it is it's so intertwined. It's such a mosaic, in that if you sort of figure out one of Umineko's mysteries, you only have to think a little bit more, and you figure out a next one, and then a next one, and a next one, and it integrates theming with world building, with plot mechanics, with character psychology and character writing, and it all sort of comes together. And it's one of the most gratifying fictional experiences I've ever felt, was putting together Umineko and being rewarded, for putting so much into it. And of course I didn't really have to obsess over it in the way I did. People don't have to obsess over Umineko in the way that some people do in order to love it. But a core theme of it, and again, this is very general, this isn't a spoiler, a core theme of it is the relationship between reader and storyteller, reader and storyteller, reader and writer, and the nature of mystery, but specifically in broader terms, how we interact with stories. And what Umineko really taught me is, and sort of formed in me, is I'm always talking about how it really devastates me when I feel like people are dismissive of the thought and work that goes into storytelling. You go on Twitter, it's a goddamn hellhole. No one, okay, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. No one respects writers, no one respects stories, everyone's so dismissive because of their tribalistic agendas. People just talk shit all over the place. It really makes me despair sometimes. And a lot of the reason I think I do feel that way is because of Umineko. It really instilled in me, like, stories are life-changing. I would find life so much less fulfilling without them. Stories make life worth living. And every time I go into a story, you know, sometimes I love it. Sometimes it changes my life. Sometimes I think it's awful. But either way, I think it's personally how I look at it is my responsibility as someone who is as someone who is experiencing this story that someone poured their heart out into, to go into it with an open mind and an open heart, and to give it the benefit of the doubt, to not be disappointed or to not be biased when it doesn't reach my expectations of what I think a story should be, and to actually expand those expectations into, I am open to whatever this story is dishing out. I'm open to it. Maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't, but I'm going to meet it at where it wants to meet me, instead of chastise it for being something that it isn't. So I just really think and this has been the case forever, for long before since I've been alive, but the internet age really exacerbates that. There is, unfortunately, not nearly as much respect for stories and respect for creators as there should be. Now, of course, I'm sure there are some cases where creators do deserve genuine criticism for not respecting their readers or being disrespectful for elements of their story, but I don't think that should be the default thing to do, is to be dismissive, to mock people for loving something, or any of that. It's just, my point is, Umineko really solidified in me something that I already knew, but sort of it was subconscious until Umineko really told me, and it's kind of how I formed my content, or my approach to storytelling, and my approach to streaming and experiencing stories and sharing my thoughts. It's kind of shaped that, and why I try to go into every story to enjoy it as much as possible, which is, you know, more rare than I personally think it should be. That's just how I think of it. I digress. Umineko is very abstract, and it asks a lot out of the reader to put together the mystery. But man, does it push you for a good reason, because at the end of episode 5, which is phenomenal, I thought, we go to episode 6, another awesome episode, but it was at a specific scene in episode 6, between two characters, where there was a line that, honestly, For some, it might just be a tiny clue. For others, they might not even think of it as important. But for me, it solidified something I'd been theorizing about for the whole thing. And in episode 6, in a random early scene in episode 6 between two characters that felt nondescript or not super noteworthy, it all clicked for me. And that's one of the beauties of Umineko, is because of the way that you have a relationship with the story, because of the way you can theorize about it and try to put things together, and because of the way, like I just said, of how if you figure out one thing, it means you figure out so many things in a domino effect that kind of solves the story. Because of all that, this quiet little scene was the moment for me where everything opened up. And I don't know that it ever was for... I don't know that scene... No one I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of people who've read Umineko, have experienced that scene as the one that did it for them. And so that's kind of such a beautiful thing about Umineko, is it can be an overwhelming story, and the way I'm talking about it might make it seem overwhelming, because the way I'm saying is, like, any given scene is full of clues that could open up the entire story and crack open the whole mystery for you. But it's also a story. It's also a beautiful story, first and foremost. It isn't something to stress out over. It's something to experience, and if you want to, no pressure, meet it where it's at and try to uncover its mysteries, and there's no pressure. Some people solve it in episode 4 or 5. I solved it in episode 6. Some solve it in episode 7. Or 8. There really is such a serene beauty to it. You can hear one of the best songs in Umineko playing right now, and it's perfect for what I'm trying to get across. This isn't something to be stressed out over or overwhelmed over, that any given scene is so rife with things that could crack it open for you. I think that's something beautiful, because you can just be just naturally going through the story, and suddenly a line comes across that makes you think, and it could connect something. And that's what it did for me. So that's why episode 6 is really special for me for that reason. But it also continues to expand. It gives you a whole new perspective and such romantic, I guess, scenes. Won't get into the big content, the big stuff that happens, but episode 6 is phenomenal and really important for me for that reason. And then episodes 7 and 8, I think there's a shift in quality from episodes 2 to 3, a slight one from 3 to 4, where they start becoming from 9 out of 10 to solid, very, very solid to strong 9 out of 10s. Then we have from episodes 6 to 7, and episodes 7 and 8 to me are 10 out of 10. They're where everything that I thought Umineko would become was crystallized, and they are, if I were to rank my overall arcs in all of fiction, episodes 7 and 8 would be very near the top. I think episode 7 is more tight and more cohesive and has less fat and has less problems. I don't know that it has any problems, really. Whereas episode 8, I think I have a couple problems with, but my God, what episode 8 did to me. I was crying for I cannot even tell you how long. But back with episode 7, introduces 2 brand new characters, which is hella bold in the last quarter of your story, but offers a totally new perspective. It crystallizes elements of the theories for those who, it kind of winks at those who have figured out some things, but it is just this incredibly emotional, riveting character piece that introduces 2 of my favorite characters in the whole story, and offers a specific theme between a character, Leon, and another character, Beatrice, that I always, always adore when done properly. And the conclusion of it is one of my favorite sequences in fiction. It's just so incredible. It's a masterful, masterful arc, is episode 7. And it is where Umineko went from one of my favorite stories of all time to, is this my favorite story of all time material? It really did. And episode 8 brings it all together. It can be a little self-indulgent. It can it can flounder maybe the tiniest bit. There were moments where I was like, all right. But my God, the payoff it provides. The sheer... Man, this story is so sad. It is so sad. And episode 8 is where I think... I'm tearing up just talking about it. Episode 8 is, I think, where it kind of dawned on me that these characters who I've seen go through so much, I've seen the worst of them. I've seen absolutely gutting, devastating tragedy that just makes you so disturbed and upset. And I've seen the best of them. And I've seen moments that made my heart swell. And I've seen every side of these characters for 200 plus hours. And not only was it coming to an end, but some of them, some of these characters, let's just say their end was not very happy. And it was like a bit of a grieving process for me, coming to terms with that. And I think the story just kind of slaps you in the face with it suddenly, as you're kind of just going, this is it, isn't it? That is the reality of this story, is that some tragic, horrible things happen. But it also offers you such hope. Such hope. It offers you such solace in being able to remember the beauty of certain things. It really helped me in my grieving process with I had recently, not super recently, but in the past year or two before that, I had lost a family member, and I had lost my dog. And I think it really helped me with I guess that point in my grieving process, because I think grief is a constant process. I don't think it's ever fully done. But at that point in my life, I was maybe struggling a little bit, and it really helped me. There are moments in this story that have quite literally, multiple, that have made me, upon realizing a plot twist, or upon realizing something about the story, or about a character, have made me literally stop reading and just go like this. And just stare at the ceiling for half an hour. I've done that multiple times with Umineko, and it takes something exceptional for me to do that with. And I did it throughout Umineko so often. And, you know, when the final scene happens and those credits roll, and you do, I think part of Umineko means reading part of the manga, which gives you a side to episode 8, specifically for episode 8, that I think is really important. But man, when it all dawned on me that I was saying goodbye, and those credits rolled, and not only was I saying goodbye to a story that had consumed me for the past 6 to 8 months, but it was so good. It's one of the best endings to a story I could have ever hoped for. It nails every emotion. The music is exceptional. It is just the ultimate goodbye to this cast, this story, and it ties a bow on everything so beautifully. And I just, if you've read Umineko, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you might just be like, man, what on earth is this story? But I just kind of like sat in a stupor, at some moments tearing up and crying, at others just in awe. I finished the story at around 11 p.m. and I didn't sleep. I really didn't. And I just knew it was a story that would stick with me forever. I really did. Episodes 7 and 8 are two of my favorite arcs in anything, or sections of stories in anything, but the entire story as a whole is more than the sum of its parts, and the sum of its parts are incredible. Episode 4, I mentioned already why it's so meaningful to me personally. But episode 6 as well, for the reasons I said, and episode 7 and 8, and like every... I don't know, man. It's so special to me. It's so special to me. And it has everything I look for. It has genuine evil, but it has such unbelievable good. It has such hope. It has such tragedy, such emotional sequences, such incredible use of the storytelling medium and the visual novel medium. Do I have problems with it? Yeah. I think it can be bloated sometimes. I think it can over-explain some things. I think that the localization and the dialogue specifically, the prose. The prose, sorry, I forgot the word for a second. The prose is not necessarily as elegant every time, all the time that you'd maybe wish it to be. So there are definitely things to it that can be improved upon. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be, and in some ways it's... I don't know, man. It means so much to me. It is my heart and soul. Umineko is my everything. It was from the moment I started it, honestly, but especially from the moment I finished it, and it continues to be to this day. Yeah, I'll always think back to that journey I had through it and that time in my life and sharing my thoughts with other people and theorizing and making notes, and on that old-ass laptop. It broke down after that. That old-ass laptop's last, I guess, duty was for me to experience one of the greatest stories I've ever seen. It died literally a couple months after that. Anyways, I think that's probably where I'll stop. I hope you can tell how much the story means to me. I hope if you were one of those people who have been waiting for me to talk about Umineko for years, I don't expect that this is, you know, probably what you were waiting for. Maybe you were waiting for a multi-hour, polished video essay like I did for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, or Remake, or even something like the 40-minute Attack on Titan thing I did, or the Yakuza thing I did. But it didn't feel right. This is what felt right, to just walk up to this camera, like I always do, with no idea of what to say, and just talk about Umineko. This is what felt right, and it was very gratifying for me, and I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, this felt right. Maybe I'll talk about Umineko more in the future, but don't expect it, because it took me this long to do this. Of course, I'm always talking about it on stream, and when people ask questions about it, or my favorite dynamics, or my favorite sequences, or whatever. But in terms of this sort of format, in a video, or a video essay, I wouldn't expect anything. This took me forever, and I poured myself into this one, and I feel like I've run a marathon somehow. It's embarrassing, man. Talking about Umineko is tough. But yeah, this is what I got. I hope you enjoyed, whether you've read it or not. If you have read it, let me know about your thoughts. Maybe do a spoiler warning if you'd like to, in case anyone who hasn't read it is in the comments. But if you haven't read it, beware of the comments just in case. And if you haven't read it, if anything I've said has resonated with you, even here or throughout the years, give it a go. I know it's a commitment, but stories that are long and huge are them being... if a story is long and huge and it's fantastic and it speaks to you, you never want it to end, and it always ends too quickly. And that's Umineko for me. It's been there for me in some incredibly tough times, and it has always been there for me, and it's always there. If I ever want to cry, I just throw on the OST. I just rewatch a scene. So yeah, that's Umineko, and that's what Umineko means to me. I hope you've enjoyed this nonsensical, emotional mess of a video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.